Welcome. Thank you for taking the time to attend this virtual presentation. Today, we'll be sharing some of the findings from a study titled Using Fuzzy Cognitive Mapping to Identify Factors Promoting Women's Satisfaction with HIV Care. My name is Lashanda Skerritt, and I'm a PhD student in Family Medicine and Primary Care at McGill University in Tiohtià:ke, or what's more commonly referred to as Montreal. I'd like to start by acknowledging how privileged I am to live and work on the traditional lands of many First Nations, including the Kanien'kehá:ka of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, Huron-Wendat, Abenaki, and Anishinaabe.
My name is Marguerite Sanchez. I'm a peer research associate on this study. I'm an HIV/AIDS activist, advocate, and artist, gratefully living on the unceded traditional territory of the Coast Salish people, including the Wasanich, Chemainus, and Tsawwassen. I'm the co-founder of two peer-driven, peer support organizations, the Southern Gulf Islands AIDS Society, based on Salt Spring Island, and Viva Women, a BC province-wide community of positive women.
We don't have any conflicts of interest to disclose. Many women living with HIV have described having unmet needs for reproductive health care and counseling. In a study of indicators of comprehensive health care for women living with HIV in Canada, reproductive health was the largest measured gap in care for women under the age of 50. To address these gaps in reproductive health care, we need to understand what the needs and priorities are from the perspective of women living with HIV. But this is something that is not currently well understood. This study aimed to understand how women prioritize their reproductive health care among other aspects of their HIV care. The project had two specific aims. The first aim was to understand how women define satisfying HIV care and identify the factors that promote satisfaction with HIV care. And the second aim was to determine how women prioritize reproductive health care among those other factors. This presentation is going to focus on findings from the first aim.
We started by doing data collection and then conducting 23 virtual individual interviews. 11 were in Quebec and 12 in British Columbia. These were conducted by two peer research associates trained in fuzzy cognitive mapping interviewing. Participants identified factors promoting satisfaction with HIV care, specified their causal relationships, and weighted the importance of each relationship from -5 to +5.
To analyze the qualitative data from the maps, we used factor matching across the individual maps to identify the unique factors. We then conducted a content analysis to identify the underlying concepts reflected in those factors and regrouped the factors based on those categories. Our quantitative data analysis approach involved using descriptive statistics to analyze participants' demographic survey data. And in the next steps of the study, we'll analyze the weights from the individual maps. These weights will be integrated in a regression analysis using data from a larger cohort of women living with HIV in Canada.
We started the interviews with findings from a systematic review of the aspects of healthcare most valued by people living with HIV in high-income countries. Women living with HIV in Quebec and BC adjusted the map based on their knowledge and expertise. This is the map based on the systematic review, and this is how I explain the process to the participants. The goal of the interview is to identify the factors that lead to your satisfaction with your HIV care, which is in the pink box at the bottom. The gray boxes represent common factors based on a systematic review that may not be true for you, and these can be moved, reworded, or completely removed from the map at any point during the interview. Our goal is to find what factors lead to your personal satisfaction with your HIV care. Everything on this map is changeable. We'll treat it like a living document until it's complete.
Here are the characteristics of the 23 study participants. Our recruitment strategy aimed to capture diversity in age, ethnicity, and previous reproductive health experiences, such as pregnancy since HIV diagnosis.
This slide is the finished map from one of our participants. It shows the richness of data we received through the interview process. These are all the boxes that are yellow. It also shows the arrow connecting factors, and finally shows the weights, which represent the importance of the relationships.
In individual mapping with participants, women identified 79 unique factors that influenced their satisfaction with HIV care. These factors were grouped into 9 concepts, seen here in yellow and orange boxes, based on our content analysis. Women also identified over 1,000 causal relationships connecting these factors together. This map is a composite of the individual maps, and it shows how the 9 concepts are related based on the factors and the relationships that women identified. Each of the concepts on this aggregate map is composed of unique factors. So as an example, this concept here, called feeling safe and supported by providers, is composed of these unique factors: having good or excellent relationships with providers, providers who advocate for their patients, good communication of information, receiving genuine support from the clinic, providers, or social workers who work at the clinic, confidentiality and sensitivity to stigma, trust and honesty between women and their providers, having female healthcare providers, regular HIV management, culturally sensitive care, and trans-inclusive health services. As another example, the concept here of empowerment, self-care, and agency is composed of the factors confidence in self, being part of the healthcare team, regular physical exercise being part of care, training in self-care, and providers celebrating health milestones.
I would like to highlight the focus on mental well-being in the yellow box there. That was a very common theme that came up repeatedly in all of the interviews that we did. And I'd also like to point out the receiving gynecological and pregnancy care, how that is indirectly connected to satisfaction with HIV care. The arrows showing the direction of the influence. So it goes from receiving gynecological and pregnancy care to feeling safe and supported by providers, which then leads directly to satisfaction with HIV care. Or another arrow goes from receiving gynecological and pregnancy care to easily accessible services.
To conclude, here are a few of our interpretations of the study findings.
Participants identified additional factors and relationships that influence their satisfaction with HIV care beyond those identified in the systematic review. Receiving gynecological and pregnancy care influences satisfaction indirectly through ease of access to services and feeling safe and supported by the clinic and healthcare providers. Women describe satisfying HIV care as holistic care that meets their needs to be seen and treated as a whole person. Maps visually illustrate the complex relationships between social supports and clinical care that shape satisfying HIV care.
The next steps in our analysis will be to analyze the weights that women assigned to the relationships in their maps. The weights allow us to quantify how each concept is prioritized by women. These weights will be used in a regression analysis to quantify the relationship between the concepts in the aggregate map and satisfaction with HIV care. This quantitative analysis will combine the fuzzy estimates from the maps, as well as survey data from the Canadian HIV Women's Sexual and Reproductive Health Cohort Study, or CHIWOS. We'd like to thank the research team involved in this project, the funders, and most of all, the women living with HIV who shared their experiences with us. We're happy to take any questions, and if you'd like to reach out to us, please feel free to send us an email. Thank you.